Chapter 39, friends and neighbours, and now things are really going to start rollicking along. All right then, if they really want to know what I think. Of course. The surveyors have been at this since noon. Squire Hulligast predicts an end to the general incarceration by tomorrow. Everyone not yet reeled away into madness prays that it be so, for no one here can bear much more company. Without meaning offence, then, 'tis against nature. What, to mourn my wife? Not to be seeking another? For a moment Mason inspects his coadjutor's shins. Then his eyes shift away and grow unfocused. Were we in Gloucester, I should expect naturally to hear such useful advice as this. 'Tis the expected thing. Simple country procedure. Alas, I may have stopped in London for too long, breathing its mephitic airs, abiding too close to its evil unsleeping. I know I have been corrupted, but perhaps it has unmanned me as well. You're just not getting out enough. Out? Out where? Gesturing at the window. White mineral desolation, unvarying and chill. Out of your melancholy. Try as he may, Mason can detect in this naught but kind intent. I only hope you're not suggesting anyone in our immediate company. I mean, you haven't been. That is, what am I saying? Of course. His eyes happening to fall upon Dixon's stomach, whose size and curvature seemed different to him somehow. The figure of it indeed changing one day to the next, the rest of us watching in some alarm its transition from a spheroid vertically disposed to one more wide than high. Ah, 'tis someone in the kitchen, am I right? Either that or I'm pregnant, holding his corporation and gazing down at it. If so, 'twould be Maureen, for I've been true to no other, she being the one you'll recall who bakes. The pies, Mason is joyous to enumerate, the tarts, the jam stuffed doughnuts, the lengthy menu of French cremes and mousses, the fruit cakes soaked in brandy, be it feast day or no. Stop, cries Dixon, they're making me hungry. Ah, warns Mason. Sure you wouldn't like to just pop back to the bakehouse, take a chance that she's in, find one or two of those iced waffles, she and her friend Pegeen. Happen you've seen her, the redhead with the curls, wears green all the time. There it is, damn, you persist. Whenever I begin to imagine we're past this, one or two malicious jokes, that's fine, I'm a good sport. But pray you, grant me a respite, no Peggeens. Perhaps I'm only trying to get thee to eat something. This self-denying has its limits. Thou're down to skin and bone with it. 'Tis an affliction sentimental, in which melancholy hath depressed thy appetite for any pleasure. Hold! You're sitting there like Henry VIII, advising me upon dietary matters? guard yourself, sir. How are we to do accurate work in the field with you subtending so many degrees of it, even at the horizon? What is this spheroid you bear, tapping Dixon's belly, or rather lug about, like some atlas who doesn't plan to bring the globe all that far? 'Tis prolate still, with a long, dejected Geordie oh. Oh, prolate, isn't it? I'm an astronomer, trust me. 'Tis gone well to oblate. Thanks for your concern at the altitude of my spirits, but what you're really seeking is an accomplice in the pursuit of your own various fitful vices. Acrimony. So, by the time the snow abates enough to allow them to rejoin the Harlands, the surveyors, having decided thereafter to journey separately, one north and one south, to see the country, returned to the Harlands the use of their honeymoon quilt, and kindly allowed John Harland to toss one of his new silver shilling pieces, which lands heads, sending Mason north and Dixon south. Next time they agree to reverse the directions. Happen I'll find some place warm at last, Dixon a bit too cheerfully. See here, I hope we'll go ahead with it. I mean, it's been like a booth load of puppets swinging clubs all about, hasn't it? Ah, no, I'm as unquiet as thee. Why, we must spread out. The one thing we know of this place is that dimension abounds. Dixon was the first to leave, the Reverend relates, and with no indication in the field book of where he went or stopped, let us assume he went first to Annapolis, whatever. How assume, objects Ives. There are no documents, Wicks. Perhaps he stayed on at Harlan's and drove all of them south, with his drunken intriguing after every eligible, meaning every, milkmaid in the forks of Brandywine. Or let us postulate two Dixons, then, one in an unmoving stupor throughout, the other, for simplicity, assumed to have ridden, as Mason would the next year, out to Nelson's ferry over Susquehanna, and after crossing, perhaps, though not necessarily, on to York, taking then the Baltimore road south, and through it, ever southing, toward Annapolis and Virginia beyond, though with suspicions as to his culvert connections already high, Dixon might have avoided Maryland altogether, instead of tempting fate. He comes into Annapolis by way of the rolling roads, intended less for the public than for the hogsheads of tobacco being rolled into market from distant plantations night and day, with 2 or 3 men to each hogshead, African slaves, Irish transportees, German redemptioners, and such, who understand well enough that others might also prefer to travel this way. In town, Dixon roams unfocused from wagoners' taverns to harbour-front sailors' dens. Only looking for that card game, he replies if asked, and if they say, "What card game?" he beams, ever so sorry, and retreats from the area, feigning confusion about everything save the way out, for one tavern is as likely as another to provide opportunities for mischief. He has certainly, and more than once too, dreamt himself upon a dark mission whose details he can never quite remember, feeling in the grip of forces no one will tell him of, serving interests invisible. He wakes more indignant than afraid. Hasn't he been doing what he contracted to do? Nothing more? Yet happen this is exactly what they wanted. And his sin is not to have refused the work from the outset. When they later reconvene at Harlan's, Mason gets around to inquiring of Dixon what was his purpose in entering Maryland. Bait. Make myself available, like friend Franklin out in the thunder gusts. You wish to be stricken, assaulted? I'm content with approached. Yet nor French agents, nor Jesuits in disguise have announced themselves, nor have Freemasons cryptically signed to me. Yet I suppose my own surveiller might be secreted anywhere in our party, among our axemen, cooks, or followers, noting everything. In Williamsburg, at last, Dixon feels he has come to the heart of the storm. There can be no more profit in going any further south. This will have to do for whatever he may learn. The tobacco plantations lie inert, all last season's crop being well transported to Glasgow by now, and the seeds of the next not yet in flats, whilst the young, who seem to be at every hand, take their joy of assemblies and river parties, balls and weddings. Others, longer in the curing shed, rather hasten to explore at last the seasonless vales of sleep, with trusted, how else, African slaves to stand in cordons all round and keep each dreamer safe. Dixon rides into town, a maze-like disposition of split-rail fences, a dockyard's worth of shiplap siding, a quiet profligacy of Flemish bond to be found upon vertical surfaces, from Pig Ark to Palace. The last seed pods hang, black and unbreached from the catalpa trees. Swains by garden walls rehearse the arts of misunderstanding. Some nights the wind, at a good canter, will as easily freeze tears to uncreased faces as fingertips to waistcoat buttons. There is an edge to young romance this year that none of those testing its sharpness may recognize quite yet. The Stamp Act has reassigned the roles of comedy, and the audience are in an uproar. Suddenly fathers of desirable girls are no longer minor inconveniences, some indeed proving to be active foes capable of great mischief. Lads who imagined themselves inflexible rivals for life find themselves now all but comrades in arms. The languorous pleasantries of love are more and more interrupted by the brisk requisitions of honour. Over the winter-solid roads goes a great seething of mounted younger gentlemen riding together by the dozens upon rented horses, express messengers in love with pure velocity. Disgruntled suitors with pistols stuffed in their spatterdashes, sealed wagons not even a western black boy would think of detaining. The May session of the Burgesses, the eloquent defiance of Mr. Patrick Henry, and the Virginia resolutions, that dividing ridge beyond which all the streams of American time must fall unmappable. lie but weeks ahead. At the college, Dixon may hear wise prophecy. At the State House, interested oratory. But there proves no place quite as congenial to the unmediated newness of history a transpiring as Raleigh's Tavern. Virginians, young and old, are standing to toast the King's confoundment. When it's his own turn to, Dixon chooses rather to honour what has ever imported to him, raising his ale can to the pursuit of happiness. Ha ha. "Hey, sir, that is excellent," exclaims a tall, red-headed youth at the next table. "And ain't it so true? You don't mind if I use the phrase sometime?" "Pray thee, sir." "Has someone a pencil?" The youth finds a scrap of paper, and Dixon lends him his lead vine that he uses for sketching in the field. "Surveyor, say," it occurs to him scribbling, "are you Mason or Dixon?" "Tom takes a relative interest in West Lines," quips the landlord, "his father having helped run the one that forms our own southern border." "Upon the topic of West Lines," Dixon assures him, "any advice would be more than welcome. Anything." "'Twas Colonel Bird that began it. Pa, with Professor Fry, continued it. My guess is the professor did most of the mathematical work, for I know Pa was ever impatient with that. He would wear out books of tables, so vehemently did he consult them. Colonel Bird's segment is the oldest, run long before my time. He recorded each day in a field book, not only the miles and poles traversed, but more usefully all the human stuff, the petty resentments, the insults offered and taken, the illnesses, the cures, the food they ate, the spirits they drank, the ladies of all hues who captured their various eyes now and again. Is it printed and sold? Not yet. When it shall be, I hope that every surveyor will read it as a term of his apprenticeship. My father styled it one of the great cautionary tales of the vocation. As to joint ventures, particularly when half the commissioners live north of the other half. In Colonel Bird's history, the Carolinians in the party were envious, gluttonous, slothful degenerates all, somehow owing to the difference in latitude. 'Twould not surprise me if Pennsylvanians were to entertain similar opinions of their own neighbors to the south, including Virginia, this land of sensual beasts. 3 young ladies are peeping round the doorway, like shorebirds at the edge of the water, stepping nicely in and out of that aura of tobacco smoke that men for centuries have understood keeps women away, as well as were they bugs. "I'm going in," declares the boldest of the girls, actually then proceeding 2 or 3 steps inside before crying, "Hey, you!" and skipping into retreat. Then another would try, and "Ew!" and out again, and so forth, amid an unbroken stream of close discussion, their desire for romantic mischief thus struggling with their feminine abhorrence of tobacco. Dixon beams and waves at them. "Are all Virginian ladies as merrily disposed?" everywhere but at Norfolk, where talk of passion far outweighs its enactment. Indeed, the sailors' paronomasia for that wretched place is Norfolk. They'll be wishing to dance, I think, judges young Tom. We've been hearing that music for a while now. But watch your form, sir, if duelling be not your preferred pastime. For one wrong dance step, leg before wicket, as you might say, and no shortage of Virginia blades about to defend a lady's honour. 'Twill be out at dawn with you. Sure enough, no more than 20 steps into the assembly room and 8 measures into a lively jig with a certain Urania, Dixon is aware of a perfumed flickering upon one cheek, which proves to be the glove of her fiancé, Fabian. "Did they tell you I was a Quaker, sir, and would not fight?" "They did, which is why I suggest we settle this at quoits, sir. Megs at 40 feet, ringers only." Most agreeable," says Dixon, instead of, as he will insist he meant to say, "If so, they are quizzing with you, sir. In fact, I am a transported felon of the most desperate stripe, to whom, in the great feast of sin, murder is but an hors d'oeuvre." "We have found quoiting," Fabian is explaining, "similar enough to pistols to satisfy us. With the same long and narrow field, the rencontre, if one wishes, at dawn, the 2 megs driven in the ground at a distance negotiable, the metal hurtling through the air, even, if you listen closely enough, a certain hum." "That was negotiable. I might have said 30 feet. Too focused, I imagine, upon the part where everyone gets to stay alive." At dawn they go trooping out, the lot of them, to a quoiting ground near the water. When there's just light enough to see the other meg by, the contest begins. After each disputant wins a game and they agree not to play the third, receiving each a kiss of equal vivacity from the fair pretext herself, all repair to breakfast amid smoky and sodden good companionship. Returning north, mud tracks, black wet branching of trees overhead as revelations of earth out through the snow, Dixon, inhabiting silence, waits clop after clop, mile after mile, for some kind of sense to be made of what has otherwise been a pointless trip. Somewhere between Joppa and Head of Elk, lightless within and without, he begins to whistle, and presently to sing. "Polecat in the parlour, hound dog up the tree, continental ladies, a riddle enough for me." In all Virginia, though slaves passed before his sight, he saw none. That was what had not occurred. It was all about something else. Not Calverts, Jesuits, Penns, nor Chinese.